Hey guys, my name is Julia and I'm the creator of that channel. Today we will discuss the story you sent me. If you like the content, please subscribe to the channel, like the video and leave a comment down below. So let's start it.
Cheating wife was shocked when I knocked on the window because she didn't expect to see me with a camera when she was with her AP in my bedroom. I guess I'll go ahead and just start with the story of my marriage experience that lasted a year, 2020 to 2021. I apologize in advance if anything is lacking coherency or if anything seems a bit ambiguous. 2020 was a hard year for many, and I just somehow managed to fall into yet another extra pitfall of 2020. My very quick marriage to the person I trusted the most. January 1st, 2020, I got a text from my old acquaintance from freshman year in college, whom I hadn't seen in years. "Hey, I miss you." And if I could change one thing about 2020, it would be my entertainment of her texts and leading her into my life that I worked so hard to build. I kind of had a crush on her in college, but I never really saw us getting into anything serious. She has been in a lot of unsuccessful relationships and seems to be the kind of person you'd think really doesn't want anything serious to do with anybody. I know. Big mistake. I have been working full-time for 2 years after university, and I was raised on premises such as structure, hard work and reward, emotion, seriousness, commitment, etc. I do, however, have my flaws too, since no one's perfect. Anyway, back to the story. Over the next couple months, we would text non-stop, and she would come over for about every other weekend, taking a 4-hour drive just to be with me. We were so happy, and she was really pushing me into proposing and getting married as soon as possible. When that didn't yield anything, in the beginning she brought the idea of a promise ring. And I think her persistence and me not experiencing such deep emotions ever before, and falling in love, led us to May 1st, 2020, when I proposed, and we went the following day to court to get married. We were so happy, and she swore to change her bad habits, which I thought I got down pretty good. Come later to find out there's a whole other level to these. An example of the bad habits was smoking, which she convinced me at the time that she quit. We get on a rental lease about the same time and move into a house in the same city I lived in. We were so happy and excited that we were out here building the life that we want. And we seemed to agree on the big things, like kids and families and stuff like that. After only about a month of living together, before May ends, I was lying on the bed working from home one day when I noticed her phone, right next to me, light up with Snapchat and Twitter notifications. Now, I had previously learned her passcode, as she told it to me once, and it's so easy I never forgot. I entered it and peeked at the notifications, and I was shocked at what I saw. My whole body started shaking as we're still cuddled up, and she's asleep. And here I am finding out that what she told me she does for a living was a complete lie in the crap. I saw the posts on Twitter and Snapchat and X sites and online X sites and figured it all out pretty quick. My wife that I just married has been streaming online for the past 3 years or so. I wasn't sure how to react as my body froze in bed. My shaking body eventually triggered her to wake up. And as soon as she did, she noticed how pale my face was and lack of eye contact, and asked, "What's wrong?" I said nothing. Again, "What's wrong, babe? Are you okay?" I asked, "What do you do for a living?" as I slowly turned her phone towards her with the very detailed posts of hers advertising her body on Twitter, and her reply was shocking and absolutely ridiculous. "How do you think I made all that money very fast and staying up all night?" Yup, she's very quick to lay her problems and lying on others very rapidly. I know some people are okay with streaming online, and whatever. I just want to mention that it was very clear that this is something that will break our relationship forever. The following moments were moments of her crying on bed and trying to hug and kiss me and tell me she's sorry and won't ever do it again, and she would quit and do anything for me and to make me happy, and that it's a soul-destroying job and so on. Yup, my dumb A didn't see anything short of forgiving her, and we carried on with working and building our marriage. And like they say, when trust's broken, everything is pretty much broken. I would start the habit of checking her phone every now and then, and I caught her secretly streaming online and texting clients and friends with benefits, like her psychiatrist, for example. And off we go. Dumb A again, forgiving again. I don't recall how many times I forgave her for lying and not sticking to such an important promise to me in such a sensitive moment, but it must have been 2 to 3 times after May. Eventually, we started seeing a marriage counselor for a few months, and unsurprisingly, it was the most assignments for her to work on her issues, of how she needs to feel desired, loved by men, etc. And let me just say that we had the greatest bed life, the greatest emotional journey together, during the good moments, of course. Our marriage seemed to be showing good signs of repair over the next few times going to the therapist. But eventually, all broke loose. I lost it. December 1st. She starts texting her psychiatrist again and exchanging explicit photos and vacation plans for prescriptions and cash. I did forget to mention that I have a very long history of all these conversations in the form of text screenshots. I remember that day. I couldn't sleep, but pretended to. We were in the same bed, and when the sun came out, I couldn't hold in the feelings of hurt any longer. I went to my computer while she was still asleep and printed the divorce forms, filled them out rather fairly, considering what she's done, and woke her up with the simple, "I need you to sign this." She was so confused, so I had to elaborate and tell her, "These are divorce papers. You don't deserve someone like me. I had enough lies. I can't trust you ever again, even if I wanted to. Save us both the head and heartaches, and sign this." She starts crying and goes into a breakdown. I got no signature that day, unfortunately. Her mom drove down, worried after what happened, and I didn't exactly tell her what's been going on, but kept it as a simple, "Our trust is broken, and I can't trust her anymore. This is for the better." After a week of back and forth talk between us, she finally agreed to sign it, wanting us to stay friends. Remember my dumb A? Yes, I said yes. Let's stay friends. And open to her another smaller part of my heart as a friend who cares about her still and provides some of her needs, since her online streaming income is no longer present. One of our main agreements as friends, who live together for the remainder of the lease, was to not have anybody over, guys in her case and women in my case. We had our separate bedrooms and tried to focus on our lives. It only took 2 weeks, December 16th, and I wake up randomly at 1 a.m., and I see a text from her saying she has a friend over. I text her my disappointment since it's clearly a guy in there, and I felt so disrespected. No answer. I get my phone and go into the backyard and get a good video of what's going on in the bedroom. Had I waited 10 more seconds, they would have been all in each other deep. I knocked on the glass creepily as I'm filming her absolute lies and deceptiveness, and the guy starts to leave. This was probably the first time I yell at her throughout the entire year of marriage and call her garbage and disgusting and so on. We come to a resolution after the fighting that she would take over the lease till it ends in May 2021 and would be responsible for the entire rent amount. I started apartment searching and ended up with a move-in date of just this week, January 9th, 2021. Keep in mind 2 things. The first is that in order to take my name off the lease, I had to pay the remaining half of the rent for the next months, and we agreed she would pay me those back on a payment plan since she doesn't really have a steady job, and she went back to streaming online now. The agreement was handed yesterday to her and is yet to be signed. The second thing is that I have all my property off the house that we lived in, except for my washer and dryer, that I agreed to leave with her as a little help till the end of January 2021. Trying to decide if I should stick to that agreement now, since she almost made a fuss out of everything and wouldn't let go of anything easy. Anyways, that same night, I finalized my move out. 10 minutes later, and with a 20-minute notice, she brings another guy over to move some furniture around. A guy she met on Bumble, whom she keeps stressing how successful and rich he is. I find myself spending the night in a motel nearby my new place since the electricity is out. I don't want to reach out to her since I feel like just cutting her off completely from my new life, 100%. I started watching cheating wives videos on YouTube, and the Reddit storytelling ones brought me here to share my story with you about my infidel ex-wife. My ex-wife deceived me and manipulated me. I was the dumb nice guy who worked overtime, trying to find stability on our shaky grounds, and yet I don't get support from her. Instead, all I get is hurt and disrespect, even on good terms. I'm glad we had no wedding, and I feel sorry for any single soul she decides to manipulate in the future. Yes, she's very good at it, and I'm a dumb A. But overall, I'm glad it only took me less than a year to find out who she really is and what she really wants to change about herself. No kids, all financial support, except for some furniture she got, was from my income and hard work. And I can let go of this person forever now, even if she comes back on her knees with another, "Hey, I miss you." I learned a lot. If you made it this far, you're all awesome and great listeners to a not-so-great writer. I hope I get better at it and provide more updates with time. But for me, all I wanted was to vent and air out some steam, because for her, it's so easy to find a guy and sleep with. But for me, I'm still in shock and questioning who the heck did I marry? LOL.
And our last story.
I went numb when I found out the shocking truth of my fiancé. Honestly, I, 26 male, didn't know this woman that well when we first met through a dating site. She was 35, and according to her profile was single. Never told me she was married. We went out on a few dates for 4 months, until she told me she wasn't interested anymore. I later found out it was because her husband was getting suspicious, and she needed to cut her losses. But a few months after, she contacted me again and told me she was pregnant. It hadn't been that long since we slept together, and she confessed everything. Her husband still didn't know yet, because she wanted to find out who the father was first. We did the prenatal paternity test and confirmed her baby was also mine. She had to tell him after that, and it was a crap show. He wanted to speak to me and called me like crazy. She got him to leave me alone after telling him I never knew about her being married. We were both lied to by her. They're apparently trying to work things out, but here's the thing. Her husband wants me completely out of the picture and is willing to adopt my baby if I terminate my parental rights. He doesn't want me in their lives at all, and this is his only condition, or he's divorcing her and taking their 2 kids. I don't know if he can actually do that, but she's begging me to do this or it'll completely break their family. Neither of them are considering that this is my child too, and I want to be in my child's life. I said I would not, and it's causing all these problems. She's called several times telling me how badly this is hurting her family, and her kids are hurt and confused because her husband's temporarily moved out until this condition is met. She feels guilty for doing this to them, but says she wants to fix her mistakes and make their marriage work if I could just do this. Plus, to her, it's a sweet deal for me since I won't ever have to raise this baby or be responsible financially. I don't see it in that way. I want to be a dad to my son. But it feels like what I want is hurting everyone else, like her kids. My close friends, who know all this and get I want to do the right thing by my kid, feel that I should walk away from this messy situation, as it'll always be a part of my life if I choose to be involved. And it's possible if her husband is willing to adopt my son after birth, he'll have a good life. Nobody else in my life thinks me being in my son's life is a good idea, and I don't know if it really is such a bad thing. Update. And by a lot, I mean, I finally became a dad. My son is healthy and beautiful. Most beautiful baby I've ever seen. One of the best things to ever happen to me, honestly, despite the drama. Thank you everyone who was helpful and encouraging in this situation. It felt good to know, even with what everyone else was saying, I had a right to say no to my ex's demands, and I'm not the one at fault for what happened. Several of you had suggested I talk to her about switching it around so that I could ask about getting full custody, instead of being cut out if her husband had such a problem with me being around. It was a great idea, and I feel pretty stupid for not thinking about it myself. So here's what happened. I decided to try again and contact her husband, because throughout this whole time, he was refusing to speak to me. But I just wanted to see if I could get through to him as a last resort. He agreed for us to talk, and I was shocked to find out he'd actually changed his mind about accepting the baby 2 months ago, before I made the post. Originally, he did have that condition that he'd only take her back and adopt my son if I wasn't in the picture, but he decided he didn't want to raise another man's baby. So she lied to me about him still having this condition, and this was just her attempt to try and fix everything, even though he was planning on going through with the divorce. He was pretty mad about what she was doing too, so he was kind of on my side about it. Did get a lawyer involved, and had another talk with her as well after he spoke to her, pretty much saying he'd never take her back, no matter what she did at this point. That got her to see trying to keep me out wasn't going to do anything. I brought up the full custody thing to see if that was something she wanted, and she agreed. To her, there was no point in having my son full-time with this whole divorce going on, and she doesn't even have her own place. He moved back into their house with the kids, and she ended up leaving. Going through with my attorney, I was able to establish paternity after my son was born so that I'd be legally recognized as his father instead of her soon-to-be ex. As of right now, he's with me full-time, but she still comes by to visit. Her life is a total mess right now with the divorce, and she's still pretty bitter toward me about it. It's not perfect, but I'm just so happy having my son in my life. Holding him for the first time, it made all the struggles worth it. It's definitely overwhelming doing it mostly on my own, but I don't regret how things played out.
Thanks guys for staying with us. I hope you enjoyed the video. Bye!
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the ninth grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry." Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. "What is that idiot doing?" "All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next." Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. "If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you." I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? "I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hope to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.